Hello and welcome back to Talkin Pitch Side. I am your host PJ with my co-host Tony. We are back with another episode, second episode of the video podcast. So if you've been following on socials, there's been a lot more showcases of our faces. So if it's freaking you out as a fan and a listener that's been a loyal listener for the past year, we apologize. But you have to deal with it because that's the way going forward. But Tony, before we get into soccer, before we get into the madness that is the MLS offseason, American football. We had Black Monday, but it kind of turned into Black Monday across the entire world because it became a Black Monday in the Premier League. I know we're an MLS Women's National Team topic, and the Scottish Premier League, which we'll talk about later in the podcast. I know you're a Colts fan, so I'm sorry that you had to go through that second half of the season. Any parting words for your Colts as we head into the playoffs for American football now?
I mean, it's the greatest fumble of all time. I think is really where we're at. We're 8-1 at one point in the season, so I'm hurting, and I think I'm not mad about keeping the coach and keeping the GM. I think our next door neighbors at the Bengals would feel differently about that, but I think that it's definitely like my prediction coming in was, Jim Irsay passed away, daughter takes over. I kind of thought she was going to wipe the board clean when we started sucking right away. Well, we didn't start sucking right away. So now I think my prediction has just been delayed a season. I think we're going to suck right away next season, and then the coach is getting fired, the GM's getting fired, and we'll start all over.
Yeah.
So one thing, though, you can't see. Maybe if I move my camera a little bit. That was my Christmas present up there.
Okay.
And his mini helmet signed by Jonathan Taylor and Egrin James. So,
okay.
Yeah, so that's how you know. I'm not faking it. There's real signatures up there. And that was one of my Christmas presents. So it was very exciting for that one.
Yeah, you see, I'm a Browns fan, so I've learned years and years ago I don't get anything with anybody's name on it or signatures anymore because no one lasts long enough in my football team to be worth it a damn. So we were part of Black Monday. Our coach was fired. In the football world, in terms of soccer, we had Ruben Amrin get fired from United. I know this isn't what we cover, but we have a friend that is a United fan and a Ravens fan, and both of his coaches were fired on the exact same day. So shout out Tanner. You're going through it right now, but
beautiful combination of teams.
At least you're not a Spurs fan like me, so it could always be worse. Could always be worse. But Tony, let's get into it. Let's get into some MLS news. We're gonna start with the not so fun news before we get into all the exciting transfers. Ricky Puig was out last year, the entirety of 2025 with ACL injury that he suffered in the semifinals of the MLS playoffs the year prior. They had kept him on the roster because they thought there was potential for him coming back, but they were so bad there was not a reason to bring him back. And then now, just before preseason, which is crazy to say that's upcoming, Ricky Puig has retorn that same ACL, and he's going to be out for the entirety of 2026. They've already announced that. First, the Ricky Puig part of it. Let's talk about that. I feel for the kid a ton. He is a star of this league. When he was playing, you got to enjoy it. Like, Ricky Puig was a joy to watch on and off the field, brought the energy, brought the life into that team, and was the real reason they went to the MLS Cup and won the MLS Cup the year prior. And you just feel for him. It's 2 years of not playing at this point, coming back. I'm hopeful. I'm excited to see him back on the field eventually. It's just, you feel for him. That's a grind. I mean, that is a grind to rehab, and he's got to do it now 2 years in a row.
Yeah, it just sucks. There's no two ways about that. I mean, for the league, he's one of the most exciting, dynamic players. That season that they won the MLS Cup, I mean, obviously he was the heartbeat of that team, the heartbeat of that offense, and like the lore of just, how he tore his ACL in the conference final in 2024. Then 20 minutes after that, still playing on it, gets the assist that wins them the game, that then, ultimately wins them the championship that he can't play in. Like that, there's just very few stories that are as good as that one. as far as just kind of the heroics that Puig has. And so to not have him again this season just hurts from a marketing piece. And the moment he was brought into the league, he was a different caliber of DP. He was a different type of DP. We were transitioning away from, oh, look at the amazing career this guy has had. Now he's going to retire here, to, hey, this is a young kid who we're getting from Barcelona. So like it was a very big switch. I think has really set a lot of the trajectory in the league, and so just to miss out on a prime year of him from just a bad knee injury, just it really sucks for him. The maybe silver lining, I mean, talking about like how it impacts how the Galaxy look on the field, is that this is something that they've kind of discovered in their press. They said in the press release that we look forward to having him in 2027, which would mean to me that he's going to go on the IR, and thus eliminating what I call the Puig effect, which happened last season. With Puig being on the IR, that means the LA Galaxy has an open DP spot. Where they go with that, you could do a lot of different analysis and figure out what they want. I mean, they could go for a like for like, number 10 creator, and then have 4 DPs in your roster and figure out how you get rid of one, after the fact next season. And honestly, that would be my preference as a fan of the league. And I just think that's the exciting move, is to figure it out later. That seems to be like a lot of what the ambitious teams are doing that we'll touch on more here this episode. But there's other way, like, maybe they're looking at it that, Peck leaves. I think that's not too far fetched to sell Peck here this summer, potentially, or Paint Sale for that matter. Those are the 2 other DPs. So there's options now for the Galaxy, which is not what they had last season. It was a big reason why they struggled as hard as they did, is basically having a DP slot hosted on the hopes of having Puig back in 25, which didn't happen. So I think altogether, it sucks to not have Ricky Puig. It's followed with a little bit of hope with the Galaxy now, knowing that the definity of it gives them opportunity in the future. But how soon that can come, I'm not sure that we can say right now.
Yeah, like I said, from now a Galaxy perspective, it has to be talked about. It is before the winter transfer window, so they have this window to go and get somebody. It's not like it's the end of the window; it's the beginning of it. So they have this ability to go get a DP, fill that slot, and I think they are confident they're going to do that. I'm really interested to see what they're going to do. Like, it would be weird. You can't really get someone that's going to take Puja's spot, because if the expectation he's coming back for 2027, you don't want to get someone that plays that same role. So you've got to get someone that's going to fit in the team, but not necessarily play that same role once Puig comes back. So it's difficult. That's hard, because you want to get somebody that's going to fill Puig's role, but it's hard to know exactly who that will be and how they will transition into the year after as well. So I think they're ambitious enough to say, hey, we're going to go get somebody, and we're going to go get someone that is good and can maybe fill that role for now, and we'll just worry about it later. Like, I think they're going to take that approach. So it'll be interesting. So it'll be exciting, and we can check it out. Next on our list here, we had Rafa Wicki announced as the Sporting Kansas City coach. You may know him previously from his stop at Chicago. Was in that COVID year, so you might have COVID brain, just not even remember it. And Chicago was that bad that you may not remember it as well. So he has gone on and done great things since then. Like, he's gone on to Young Boys, and I think he won the league with Young Boys. And he's done a great job since then. I think he deserves another chance. I don't think you could put what was going to Chicago in that time period on Rafa Wicki. I think you have to look at that as a collective and what that management team was doing, what the players were at that time, and make sure you take that all into account. And COVID. It was all weird at that time. So we'd love to get your feedback. I think it's a good signing, and I would assume you probably feel a little similar.
Yeah, I think everything you said rings true there. That it really was a I'll give him a mulligan for his time in MLS, just because of all the factors that you mentioned, and really the most prevalent just being that Chicago was had different management at the time. And I think just had a lot of really poor signings that they were fighting through at that time. And wasn't really given a chance on top of a pandemic and all that stuff. It wasn't the right hand to be dealt for really anybody. I'm not sure that was a seat that anyone was going to succeed in. So again, hence the reason I give Rafa Wicki the mulligan on that one. And to your point, since then it's been on the up at Young Boys, really dominant in Sweden. So to see him come back, I think I'm excited for. I was following the league when Rafa Wicki really first came in like 2019, and I always liked his personality. I think that I haven't followed him too much since he left, but I would assume that we get some very like his transparent pressers is what I kind of love the most. Is I think he'll be pretty open about tactics and how they want to move around, and then give that on top of this is a Sporting Kansas City team that has a pretty blank slate. New GM, now new coach, and Dejan Joveljic, who I was gassing up in our last kind of bonus episode thing we did. So it's one of those things where now that you got a guy like he can have a vision to build around what they've got there, and kind of a reset with Sporting Kansas City. I don't know what iteration you want to call it, 2.0, past the Peter Vermees era, and being their own. Really being their own entity now. Before Peter Vermees was being the GM and the coach, and that was holding them back in a few different ways. Not to be harsh on Peter Vermees, I think he was an excellent coach, probably not a great GM. And so all of that to say, like there's a really good runway here for Rafa Wicki, and I think this is a nice look for Sporting Kansas City going with some league experience. As well as some foreign experience as well. So I agree. I like this. I like this a take from Sporting Kansas City and David Lee, the GM.
Yeah, I think positive. Of course, we want to see it come to fruition. I don't know what you can expect really from Sporting Kansas City this season, so that's what your concern is for him. But I think I'm excited to see how it all works out. Moving on here, quick hitter one. Atlanta signing left back Elias Baez for $3 million U22 initiative signing. Pretty significant transfer fee for U22, and I think it's something they need. We've talked about it. They of course don't have like Brooks Lennon in that fullback role anymore. They've moved on from some guys, so it's a need, and we'll talk about their coach later on. But I think it's more of I'm trusting this regime a little bit more than the last one in terms of decision making. So we'll see how it plays out on the field. Next one here, I'll have you talk about a little bit, is Toronto signing veteran goalkeeper William Yarbrough. Of course, this is to fill in for Sean Johnson. Any feedback on that one? I know that they have a couple names now there, young guy versus veteran, and I'm sure Yarbrough's going to get some time, but it'll be interesting to see how they fill that Sean Johnson void that's been there for quite a while now.
Yeah, I think this is mostly a depth move. I think Toronto's anticipating on using Gavron as their starter, who has been decent when called upon when Sean Johnson was hurt or absent or whatever. So I think that really that's just a solid backup move. He was kind of second/third in line at Miami most recently. So I think you're going to see a similar role with him. But I think that really it's something that needed to be done at Toronto after moving on Sean Johnson. They had to fill out that goalkeeper room. And I think as far as who you're doing that with, Yarbrough is not a bad option there. And if Gavron goes down for a couple games, I'd be willing to trust him in net, or Open Cup or Leagues Cup or those kind of things. I don't think he's a bad option to rely on. So depth at goalkeeper room for Toronto is what I would call that one.
Yeah, maybe this will be the end of our goalkeeper charades that's been going on here in the MLS. Moving on here, some bigger news. This is not official yet, so this is a rumor one that people feel confident about. Houston is in talks to sign Mateus Bogusz, and of course we know him from his time with LAFC. Dynamic player, went to Liga MX. Kind of that trend where some really good MLS players go to Liga MX and now they're coming back. I think it's a great signing for Houston if they get it done. It's dynamic. You're creating a playmaker, and you are adding something to this attack that has been desperately missed in terms of just a chance creator. Of course, Ponce's there. He needs some. He needs something. We need something to feed that guy in front of net for Houston, and Bogusz can do that. I mean, he's gonna provide a lot of attack for this team and a lot of chance creation, and I think it's a no brainer if they can get it done.
I think so too. It's definitely the first move that Houston's kind of transitioned a little bit into with the league experience thing that we harp on so much. Before, with Ponce, that was an unknown quantity. Linger, that was an unknown quantity. Yerme, who they are picking up or did earlier this offseason, also unknown quantity. And I say that tongue in cheek, like, obviously you understand what caliber these guys are at, but you don't really know until you see it in action in the league. So to go with Bogusz, we know he's done it at a really high level. And I think it'll be interesting to watch. For Cruz Azul, he's primarily been a striker, which is Ponce's spot. So I don't know if you bump him to the left or underneath it Cam, and then make Jack McGlynn more of a true 8, which I don't know how you feel about Jack McGlynn, but I think for me, it's hard to profile his best spot just as a player. It doesn't matter if it's Houston or men's national team. So I think there's some flexibility there. But I think that just based on the additions already, you're not going to see Bogusz on the right, and you're probably not going to see him up top as striker. So it'll be interesting to see how that all fits together. That certainly wasn't really his role at LAFC when he was in the league. He was on the right. So it's just something to keep an eye on. I generally like the move, but kind of envisioning how that's all going to come together, where everybody's going to play, I think that it adds some interesting questions and narratives around this Houston team.
Yeah, in my mind, it's a good problem. Like I know that it may not be in his perfect fit spot, but the dude's talented enough and proven the MLS that he can play. And I think if you want to add a pivot of Jack McGlynn and Bogusz together, I don't think that's ever going to be a bad thing. I think Jack McGlynn will fall into that 8 spot, and I actually think, in my personal opinion, that's where he best plays. And I think that this is something that's going to help Houston compete and be in some games and have someone who can create a moment that can win them a game at the end. Because we saw so many times Houston was in a game and they couldn't get the ball in the back of the net. Like it was mind-boggling to watch at times. So I think it's a good problem to try and figure out how all these things go together. We'll stay in Houston. Talking about Elmo's proven talent, we have a return in Houston. Hector Herrera. Let me tell you, this was not one I was expecting at all. I thought when he had left, that was the last we were going to hear of Hector Herrera in the MLS, and he's back. So he's going to be coming back, playing that more 6 role and sitting deep for them. And he played. I mean, credit to Hector Herrera. He's still putting in shifts, Tony. I think he had 38 starts this past season. Like he's still out there going every single game, and I don't think it's a bad move. I don't know what the exact number is. I can't imagine it's super high. I think this is more a comfort thing for both sides, where they know exactly where they're going to get from Hector Herrera, and I don't think it's ever bad to have some veteran leadership. I just don't know how much more Hector Herrera has to offer in his career at this point. He's not a game winner anymore. That's for sure. But I don't think it's bad to have a veteran leader like Herrera in your locker room.
Yeah, and I think honestly, we kind of thought that a little bit too when he came the first time to Houston. Granted, that was 3 years ago now, maybe not 2 years ago. Time flies. But, he's 35 now. I think that those concerns are valid as far as what he can bring to you. But I think that, back in the golden days of Houston, where they were making the 8 seed in the playoff pretty consistently, he was mainstay. It was him and Coco Carrasquilla, and that lower defensive mid was a shredder and really protected a lot of that team. So I think that, like, having him come back, that is a need that they have. I mean, you were just mentioning too, like, okay, if you find a midfield system where you do a pivot, but somehow, throwing in Jack McGlynn and Bogusz, don't forget you got Linger also somewhere in the mix as well, then, who's really coming back and playing defense? I like the attacking profile of that, but that's a lot of ground to cover for a 35-year-old and Hector Herrera. But I think it's a start, and having someone with the mindset of that to just come in and just disrupt in the middle, because Jack McGlynn's not going to be that guy. I don't think, even as a true eight, if you tell him to wear a different hat, that's just not in his locker, especially being younger and I think still filling into his body. Like it's just something that he can't present that physicality. So I think it's a start, at least in the mindset of, we need guys who are going to sit back and protect our back line. So I like it from that perspective. Obviously, I think that there is some plaudits to be had here too with anytime you bring in a player back that you've already had, like that usually means that, things when you moved on were handled pretty maturely and well. And so I think that does have a little bit of merit with just the Houston office and Hector Herrera as a player and his agent. Like, just that's something that like they both maturely moved on and said, hey, my time back in Houston was good. I do that again. So I think there's a little bit of that too, but it's not the on-field stuff. The on-field stuff still, again, a lot of options, a lot of question marks, and not necessarily guarantees that this is really all going to get put together and work. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't hate what they're doing. I think with how attacking those guys are in front of Hector Herrera, like you said, he's gonna have to work when he is back there defending. I just don't know how much he's gonna have to even come up field. So he's just gonna be hanging back with the back line for a lot of the time, in my mind. Moving on here, we're to the teardown of Minnesota United. Here's one of them. Robin Lod is on his way to Chicago. This, to me, is another no-brainer move. Like, talk about almost proven. That's Robin Lod. And to get him on a TAM deal in Chicago, where they just, I just think they need more chance creation. They need more MLS proven players in there. I think they run a lot of non-MLS proven this past year. And I think adding him to that attack is just going to make them so much more dynamic. He's a leader. He's a guy who knows this league up and down. And like I said, I think there's about 30 or 25 teams that would have said, if Robin Lod wants to come here, we'll take him. And that happened to be Chicago. I think it's a need. And I think Greg Berhalter's just got to be cheering it at his home right now, because they were able to get a guy like this in free agency.
This was huge for sure in free agency. The other part of this, like, man, if the Galaxy would have known about Puig like a week earlier, this would have been the move. And
then you go get somebody. It would have been perfect.
Correct. And here's the thing too, is that Chicago's not in that different of a position than the Galaxy are. Andre Franco, their DP attacking mid, number 10. I mean, he's out for, I'd probably say, at least half the year. So to plug in with Robin Lod, who's not going to take up any kind of roster spot like that, that's a sign now, figure it out later. No transfer fee, and paying him, off a free agent, it's 90% of his salary now, because that's how our league works, is that you can't offer as much as what they are currently making. So, it's a big win, I think, for Chicago. It's a great fix for the moment. It is like a Band-Aid that is like the premium brand. I don't know how else to say this. It's Band-Aid brand Band-Aids right here is what we got going on. But they were really smart with this pickup. And I think that, like you said, there was a lot of people that were probably calling about Robin Lod. It's still amazing. There's another player from Minnesota that's walked to free agency that just doesn't make a lot of sense why they're moving on from Minnesota. And I know we got more Minnesota coming up, but it's head scratching from that perspective. It's great for Chicago, given their circumstances and where they're at with the roster build, and then how they're able to be quickly competitive. Not that they weren't last season, but even to kind of swerve and jump some hurdles with injuries already. I think it's an excellent move. It's really smart, and man, it's exciting to see him. Now he's got three options in front of him with, Bamba, Zinkernagel, and Kuipers. So it's a great looking offense right now, and a really smart pickup from Chicago.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer type move. I think you had gotta, and we'll get into it. I mean, more Minnesota. I think you've got to be critical of their front office right now, because especially the world we live in, the MLS, where the cash furs exist, like the MLS to MLS transfers, deals that can happen now, to not have some of these guys on a contract where you're at least getting something. Like anything. You're just letting Dane St. Clair, Robin Lowe just walk. Your pillars of your team are just walking for free, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like the big no in the soccer industry. You can't let people walk for free. So I think Minnesota fans, especially with the news will come later, are going to be quite critical of what's going on.
And Kip Keller. They let Kip Keller walk for free.
Shout out.
That's a crime.
The Penguin. The Penguin celebration. I'll never forget it. The fake goal in Cincinnati. Okay, let's get into our Inter Miami segment. We got one of these every single episode, it feels like, at this point. I posted on our socials about it. I don't know how they've done it, but Tony, this team's better. This team is better than it was last year, and we'll get into some of those moves and why. So the big one that has a lot of people scratching their head right now is they are bringing back Allende on a TAM deal. A TAM deal. The fact that they still have an open DP spot. We bring back the guy who just set the playoff record for most goals in a playoff run, in playoff series, or I guess the full run, was Allende with 9 goals, and you get him back on a TAM deal. You have Luis Suarez signed. Now you can go. I don't even know what they'll do with that DP spot. I really don't. I mean, technically they don't have one right now. The idea is that they're going to be letting go of one of those U22 guys eventually, but it's mind-boggling. I want to see the numbers. I think a lot of MLS fans are going to be doing the classic. They're cheating somehow. They're bending the rules somehow. I mean, I think people just got to fully wrap their head around. Guys are going to make sacrifices to play with the greatest player that's ever played this game. And unfortunately, yes, us in Cincinnati and Columbus and Minnesota and Colorado do not have the pull that Inter Miami has. And that's the reality of the situation. And you've got to give Miami credit because I think they could easily sit on their laurels a little bit and just be like, we have Messi, we're going to get our paychecks. Dude, they're making moves to not only win, but win everything. Like, this is the type of stuff that we'll get into a couple more here. I'll just run through them really quick, then we'll get into a little bit more of Miami. They're also signing Mika. I think it's Mikal is the actual pronunciation.
Mikhail.
Michael. Yeah. The Brazilian Mikhail. He of course was at Houston, was an MLS Best 11 player at Houston, and moved on, went to Palmeiras, and now is back coming to Inter Miami. And then they've also signed David Ajaya, I think is the pronounce. I want to say Alaya, but I think it's Ajaya. Ajala. They get him from Portland. Like, they are filling needs in this team that I think if there were any holes, like these were the tiny holes. Like you needed another center back, you needed maybe one more midfielder, you needed that attacking player and Allende to come back, whether it's him or somebody else, and they've just plugged all those holes, along with getting just younger. Like Busquets, Alba, you're gonna miss those guys, but the fact of the matter is they've gotten younger and they've reinforced the team around Messi to withstand the season that they're about to go into, where you're going to have the CONCACAF Champions Cup run that I got to imagine they're going to go deep in, the full season, the World Cup in the middle of all of this, and then you've got just the playoffs and everything. It's going to be a long year, and I think it was essential for them to get younger and get guys who are going to be available to play every single day.
Yeah. So there's a couple parts of this conversation, right? We'll start with just the purely sporting part with who they're bringing in. You know, obviously we mentioned Reguilon coming in. That's your Alba replacement, right? Left back.
I didn't even put that on the list. We've talked about it in the previous episode.
Yeah, I think we've talked. Yeah, and then Mikhail, center back, extra coverage there. Ayala, one of the best CDMs in the league. So that's your Busquets replacement. Things are on the up and up right there. They're going for like replacements, and I think they're a team that wants to win everything, and that's true of every team, but they certainly recognize that there's a finite window. Well, that's true. Sorry, Montreal. But they are a team that recognizes, in my opinion, that you've only got so many years of Messi, and some people, I don't think there's a lot of validity to this, but like that he could retire after the World Cup, or not return or make that transfer then. I doubt that. I think he'd play at least till the end of the season and probably want to open up the new stadium in Miami. He owns part of the team now. He wants to be a part of that, but I guess you just never truly know. Um, all of that to say, like these are high risk moves. These are short term deals. One note that's not going to jump off the paper to you is with Ayala is that because he's an in league transfer, they inherited his contract, which only has 1 year left on it, and that it is really risky for any transfer. Right, is that you're kind of sitting on a ticking time bomb. How you were mentioning Minnesota having people leave for free, they're rolling the dice on not getting a new deal done with Ayala, who's a very valuable in league player. But it's to win now, and they may not see any return on a transfer fee on him on the back half of that, based on just the risk that they're running in the timing of that contract. But that's the kind of moves that Miami is pulling. So then that leads into the next thing, which is and really a big buzz in the online community, MLS fans these days, is this can't be legal. How are they doing this? And I think that there's a combination of things that are happening. One that you nailed on the head. If you get to play with Messi, you just saw him win an MLS Cup. You want to win an MLS Cup too. Honestly, it's a like value booster for yourself. You could take a pay cut, play with Messi, which is an awesome experience from what it seems like everybody's doing. Then you win MLS Cup. When new contract time rolls around, guess what? Miami probably can't afford you anymore, and that's okay. You can move on to your next one, and then you get your bag. So, like, I think that it's a really nice monetary stepping stone there that people don't mention for some reason. I don't see that part. The other part is that with as much players that have come in, you have to remember that Inter Miami's been a revolving door since the Messi stuff has gone down. They've sold a ton. I pulled up this list just to in the last year. These are all players that they sold for big fees. Starting with Diego Gomez to Brighton, that's the headliner there, right? But then there's Facundo Farias, Leonardo Campana, Emerson Rodriguez, Robert Taylor, CJ Dos Santos. List goes on a little bit further, but those are the big ones. All of that gives them GAM, in which they are able to make these trades. They're able to buy down these contracts. This is not a small amount of money. And so people are saying, well, how does it add up? Well, it doesn't add up by the yearly, Garber bucks that are handed out, but it does add up with the transfers that they've had outbound that we conveniently forget about too. So for me, I understand the frustration with people saying, the league is bending the knee to Messi, and it is unfair because the Adidas contract and the Apple TV cut and the jersey sales and all that jazz. But that's even where the DP rule was created. The DP rule did not exist. The Galaxy said, "Hey, we want to sign David Beckham. MLS, can you help us out?" And they made the DP rule. That's just how it works. And the other part of it that conveniently no one's going to talk about, and I think it's also depends on which fan you are of what team that you really feel the benefit of this. But the idea of everybody paying for Messi to come is because he boosts all the numbers when it comes to ad revenue and TV and stuff, and that money ends up back in your team's pocket. Where it goes after that, that's up to your ownership, right? But it's still benefiting your team. Maybe it doesn't benefit you as a team, but it benefits or you as a fan, but it benefits your team. So there's all those arguments that I'd love to sit all day and quash, because it really is. It's maybe not as transparent as we'd like it to be, but it's fair. They've already been slapped on the wrist when they accidentally broke rules. That'll happen again. I mean, they suspended Messi for not showing up to an All-Star game. They will do that stuff. It's not, it's not unprecedented. So, that's just all my rant on Miami right now. But from a sporting sense, obviously really smart, ambitious moves. Their next target is CONCACAF Champions Cup. They're going to sacrifice a lot to go after that. So,
yeah, I think there's a little bit of mix of you want the MLS, if you're someone who's been watching forever, to stay as your league. You want it still to be what it was in the beginning, and this is about a lot of the growth that's happening in the league. It's uncomfortable, it's changing the league a lot, and I think you're also getting the perspective of this is the Tom Brady Patriots if you're an American football fan. it's easy to hate the big bad, and I think that's what
Yeah.
Inter Miami's becoming, and I think it's good for the league. I think it's a good storyline. It will be interesting to see how competitive it will be this year because as of right now, I think it's really easy to say that Inter Miami is going to be the favorite for almost everything. Um, One last story that happened with Inter Miami. We'll get into this while we're talking about it. They attempted to sign Tristan Blackman from Vancouver. This was a big hope. So it came out of nowhere. Everyone started freaking out. This is where I think a lot of people were like, "What are they doing? How are they doing this?"
Yeah.
And it was put out there that they attempted, and then it was quickly disputed. And the Vancouver owners, Tony, came out and made a statement, a public statement, being like, "This is not happening. We are not engaging in these talks." And I think they wanted to squash it because I think they could feel the pitchforks coming to their door, being like, "What are we doing? Why are we getting rid of our the best center back in the MLS right now? Like, why
Yeah.
are we? What's going on?" And I think it's great for the league this didn't happen because I think that would have been the one where it was like they got the MLS goalkeeper of the year and the MLS center
Yeah.
back of the year, defender of the year, and Tristan Blackman. I been like, what's the point of showing up this year? But it did not happen. So everyone can take a deep breath. We can all relax a little bit in Vancouver. You can thank your owners for not fully engaging because I'm sure the talks happened. There's no way all these reports came out and there was not a conversation at least happening.
Well, and you know how a lot of these go sometimes too is that you never know when a rumor like that is made up to be a bargaining chip. Like I'm sure they may be like I can always call and reach out and say, hey, what's the situation? And then that can be like, oh yeah, Miami's checking in on Tristan Blackman, and like a lot of these will be stories untold, right? But that stuff does happen, and like I have absolutely I've never seen anyone say this, and it probably did not happen, but maybe there was something where they were finishing up a deal with Mikael, and he was getting a little fishy about something.
Mm-hmm.
And then they made up that rumor to put the heat on him to say, okay, well, you don't have to come to Miami if you don't want. Like that, stuff like that happens all the time. So that could very easily be what was at play, and why Vancouver would feel the need to speak publicly and say, this isn't that real. They didn't go as far as to say that was just being a pawn moved around, but stuff like that happens. Agents start those rumors, GMs start those rumors. Like all of that is, and ultimately in the grand scheme of things, people trying to get what they want in the transfer market.
Yeah. Another quick hitter here. Seattle signing Nikola Petkovic from Charlotte, U22 initiative. He never really got a shot under Dean Smith. Like he just really didn't play. I think some people were high on him coming in, thinking he would make an impact, and just really didn't get much time on the field. So Seattle's kind of taking a risk here. I think Seattle's built to take risks like this, where you can say, hey, this guy's within the league. He knows the league. He's got a year under his belt. We are so set with all of these veterans and guys under contract where we don't need this guy to be great, but let's put him around our system and our team and see if that kind of like lifts him up. And I think it's a good risk to take. I think Seattle's in a position to take a risk like this, and another no brainer for me.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, when it's a designated roster spot and you aren't using it, probably makes sense to get off of it, and definitely get some good value off of it too. And then on the other side of that is that Seattle has another open U22 slot, so they had some room to give there. Specifically, when talking about like defensive mid depth, you look at the Seattle team that's Christian Roldan, Obed Vargas, Snyder Brunell, and now Hassani Dotson got taken over from Minnesota. I kind of wonder if this is a little bit of planning for the future as well.
Mm-hmm.
Obed Vargas, really hot name. Just the trajectory he's on, his age. I would be surprised to see him. I mean, maybe he plays a full year here in MLS, but beyond that, I think I'd be surprised to see him anymore. Just because of bigger leagues calling for him. So I think that may be a little bit of what's at play there, but even not, like I think that Petkovic, while it seems like he has a pretty high ceiling, has not had the minutes to really kind of solidify his craft and prove himself. And so I'm not sure that yeah, you would see him slide up too far on the Seattle depth chart. I think that he's going to be more of a bench backup option, at least from the get go, and then has to earn his way up. But if anything, I mean, we saw how crazy Seattle's year was last year. I mean, some extenuating circumstances with Club World Cup, making it all the way to the final and winning the League's Cup, those kind of things where that was a pretty beat up roster. And for a
Oh
while,
yeah.
they were solidly running the B team, and the B team was holding it up for them. So could be very realistic to still see Pekovic get some minutes out of that, but it just seems to me like it is not it's not an instant starting 11 plug in type move.
hmm Yeah, it definitely feels like hey, this is a guy we think we can mold and grow and build up a little bit, and whether it's move on eventually from him and after he gains some value, or just be a staple for Seattle going forward. I think that's what they're hoping for. Um, I'm gonna ask this question because I don't. The next thing on our list here is gonna ruin this question, so I'll answer it first. I wanted to ask Tony what his favorite signing so far is this offseason. Of course, we still got a lot of time. Winter transfer window is really just starting, so there's still more to come. But just so far, I'll answer first. The name I put on here that we have not talked about yet, Christian Espinoza, the most sought after free agent on the market, and he made us. There's rumors he was actually going to go out of the league because he's going to be able to get more money because of the rule we've talked about. He's only going to be able to get 90% of what he could get at San Jose. It ends up he signs with Nashville. So the Schaffelberg move kind of makes sense now. And you go and get this guy in Espinoza. And we talked about it. You had Sam Surge and you had Hani Mukhtar. Your concern was how much can you really rely on these guys year in, year out? With the age of Hani and what he's able to do, like Hani's still Hani, but he's not gonna be able to be the MVP guy anymore. Like that's just not a realistic expectation. He can still produce a ton. And this move, Christian Espinoza, every single year, he is like within that top 10 of chances created. And he's within that range of he's gonna put so much service into Sam Surridge and Hani Mukhtar, where Hani Mukhtar doesn't always have to be the guy that has to create for somebody else now. Like he can be a finisher, and that's the stage of the career he's moving to. Like he has to be able to finish more versus create everything. And Christian Espinoza, having him to go along with Hani and have now Sam Surridge in front of them finishing these chances, it is now creating one of the better attacking forces within the Eastern Conference and within the MLS in my mind. Like you've got three guys that are surefire MLS proven guys up front that I don't want to face on any given day. Like that, your defense is going to be on their heels all day long with those three guys going at you.
Yeah, for sure. This is just such a needed position to be filled by Espinoza. I mean, it's really we mentioned this, like, it's Surge and it's Mukhtar, and that's it. Who's number three? And like basically those two were planned 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, etc. There was no backup plan, and if either of them went cold, Nashville really struggled along offensively. So to have this third option is huge for this Nashville team, and to think that basically he's effectively taking the Schaffelberg role, but it's Christian Espinoza. So it just from a sporting sense, it makes a ton of sense. I think from a front office perspective, this was an interesting one too because of basically every team called about Espinoza as soon as he became a free agent, and it sounds like from the reporting that. Pretty much Espinoza was only interested in going to a winning team is what he considered. So probably just top table teams on both Western and Eastern Conference. I know LAFC was in that mix. And picture him in an LAFC jersey next to Son and Bawonga. Thank goodness that did not happen.
I think Portland was his number 2 though, which was reported.
Yeah.
So
very interesting.
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
So all that to say, like, props to Nashville for putting a pitch together of, proving, hey, we're a team that you can come here and win. I think it's also a little bit of like, you can come here and win and you're not going to ride the coattails of anybody. Like, we need you. Like, you're going to be an integral part of this. So yeah, I really like this attack now in Nashville. I know I was catching some flack in the group chat about power ranking Sam Surge as number 7 going into 2026. And like I'm not sure if I'm going to move him actually because it's just the goal volume is going to get shared. I mean, a team scores roughly, I don't know, like 50 to 60 goals on average a season. And then last year, I think that Surge and Mukhtar combined for like 48 goal contributions or something like that. So it's like the number of goals can't go up, but the amount of who's scoring them, I mean, it could, yeah, sure, but like it could go down. So uh, that's why I'm not sure that I'm putting Surge any higher than where I already have him. But all that to say, Nashville as a whole, that does boost their stock tremendously. And this was I think a team that was kind of a little bit maybe feeling on the downs for me personally, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Just Zimmerman on the way out, and just kind of how deflating their season ended with just getting squashed by Miami. Felt like, where are they going to improve? And that, here's your answer. It's Christian Espinoza. So this is an exciting move for them.
Yeah, like you said, I think Nashville fans were desperate for news like this, where you have Shuffleberg and you have Zimmerman move on, and you're kind of like, okay, was this great year we just had for nothing? Like, are we just gonna sit back now? And this was the complete opposite. Like they're going full on attack. Like some of their games are gonna be some high scoring games. That's all I can say about Nashville as I see it right now. Like we're gonna see some 4-3 games going on in Nashville this year. So I think exciting, good for the league. I think good for the Eastern Conference to get talent in that top half like that, and it will be interesting to see how they compete. Okay, we're gonna get into the biggest Minnesota news now. We've been kind of putting out there, leaving a little trail as we've been going along here. Eric Ramsey, Tony, is leaving right before preseason to go to West Brom, which with my former assistant coach Ryan Mason was the head coach of West Brom for about half a year and has been let go. That's who he's replacing. It's tough. I don't know how to explain this for Minnesota fans, but I think you were already, of course, with Dane St. Clair feeling down, and I know that's part of the next question I'll ask you here, but you're feeling down about that. You're feeling down about Robin Lode, and then you get just the haymaker that is you're losing your coach, probably most of the staff. I know that the rumor is one of the assistants who took over before his interim is going to take over. It's just the fall off for Minnesota this year is going to be rough, and I think you could see that already with how they play because it's inconsistent at times, and you're really dependent on the defense. And when you're losing Dane St. Clair, you got to feel bad. I think for Eric Ramsey, I'm not surprised he's doing this. I think from two perspectives. I'll give two perspectives right now. I think he just saw what happened to Wilfred Nancy, and I know his name. I know Eric Ramsey's name was out there to already be in maybe like some other options, so they were hoping they were going to keep him. But I think the MLS coaching name is not on a great stage right now, so I think he saw an opportunity to go take it before that opportunity went away. And then two, I think he's seeing how this front office is working with Minnesota right now. And I think he didn't want to stick around for another year and say, I mean, this team he was going to be playing with was going to be rough, Tony. Like it was going to be a rough year, and I don't think he wanted his name to be brought down because of that. And I think in my mind, for him, it's a no-brainer. Like if I'm him, I'm making the same move, and I'm going to a team if they pitch me well that they're going to be ambitious and they want to push forward. And he's going to a league that's of course comparable to the MLS, but then you have that direct line from England to maybe even to the Premier League someday if he does so well at West Brom to get an opportunity in the Premier League. So he's an English guy. It makes sense. I think it's just really tough for Minnesota.
Yeah. That's a good point. I didn't consider the perspective of, coach versus front office there, and maybe that some of that was at play. I think that's pretty realistic. I also think too that, Eric Ramsey, obviously, you mentioned he was a coveted coach. He was in conversations overseas again. Minnesota was familiar with that too. And it sounds like, the idea when hiring him, was like, this is not your forever home. We just get to like basically enjoy you for a few years until you move on to bigger and better things. So I think that Minnesota maybe not prepared for the exact timing of how close we are to the start of the season, but I think is probably ready for a quick coach search / hire. I doubt we enter the interim, with no coach for Minnesota. I think that I think that they'll put it together. That being said, though, and this is kind of goes a little bit into like coaching theory, and maybe one of the reasons why I think this is a good time for him to leave. And with leaving, maybe bring with him his very distinct play style, at least for this league, right, of bunkering and countering. Um, I don't think a lot of players really enjoy playing that way, and you know, like the coaching theory really is like, you could have like these conversations about like how important is a coach really? Is it just maximizing probabilities? Is it man management? Like, what is the coach really there to do? Like, from an ownership perspective, what am I investing in when I'm paying maybe for a higher dollar coach? And I think that where we were getting with Minnesota was that he's playing a style that was maximizing probability, but was minimizing what locker room vibes, I guess we'll call. It's kind of the power of friendship versus tactics. Like, and I think that that is an exhausting system to play as a player or be involved in that for a long time. Um, I don't have an official word with this. I'm not buddies with everybody over there, but to me, it kind of seems like you can only do that for so long before you just kind of start losing the buy-in. Obviously, it's they were getting to some important games, semifinal in Open Cup, semifinal in the Western Conference, but it just to me seems that they were not, or sorry, quarterfinal in the Western Conference. They just I don't think that people were really going to be bought in the same way this year. And, now when you kind of thin out the roster like this too, in a front office, now more than ever, may be the right time to switch how they play too. So maybe that's part of the consideration with the new coach hunt. But I think that you've got a skinny down roster that, you could complain about and say, the talent here, it's not on par. And like, I think that they still have some nice pieces, but I think it's a little bit subpar. But now's the time you can look at that as an opportunity for a new coach. Will be attractive for a new coach and say, yeah, we've got room to add a DP. We can change how things go around here. Like, that is the appeal for Minnesota. That is the hope for them, I think, after this move. It's tough timing with the coaching thing, but I kind of feel like we were heading into a regression year if Ramsey was going to stay. And that also smart reason for him to leave too, just personally to get a new opportunity. So it stings for Minnesota, but I think it makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. And I think that there is opportunities for Minnesota to take this and run with it.
Yeah, that style of play, and you see it. I mean, it's not only Eric Ramsey that runs this. You see it across the world. It's great when you're winning, but when you're not winning and you're sitting back all the time and you're allowing goals, it's a miserable way to play. It's not how a footballer was raised to play. It's like you're told just like you want to go attack, you want to push forward, and when you're told to sit back, it's like against your DNA that you were raised into. So it works, but if it doesn't work, you do get some unhappy people, and you have people turn on you, and the fans turn on you, because it's not an exciting brand to go watch and pay tickets to go watch. So, I agree. I think it's the right time for it. Before we move on too far, I did also want to ask you. I know I prefaced it a little bit, but who was your player that you think is the best signing thus far for any MLS team?
I mean, thus far as like what a good signing does, which is address a need. For me, it's Dane St. Clair to Miami. I know that's a corny mainstream answer, but like, I mean, Miami was hurting a goalkeeper. And when they signed Dane St. Clair, Rocco Rio Novos wasn't confirmed to be coming back either. And your other options, Ustari, who is very poor. So to fix your need with the player of the year in that position of need, I think is really, really smart, good way to address it. So for me, I think that's the biggest eye-popping move thus far. But I reserve the right to change my mind. Let's see how the rest of this goes. I think we got more DPs coming in. It's going to be the Toronto number 9 when he comes.
Still waiting for it. Still waiting for it.
Still waiting for it. But I think he's coming. So I'd be excited about that one too.
Okay. Really quick, we've talked about it. I just want to note this happened officially between our podcasts. Wilfried Nancy was fired as Celtics coach. We've talked about plenty on our socials, so I don't want to go too deep into it. All I can say on this point is I really do think he did not take serious what that brand of football is, what the expectation of brand of football is at Celtic and Rangers, especially in that league. Like, there's only been two teams that have won that league for like 30 years, and that's the expectation. And if you're not winning, they're not going to wait around. And he really, I mean, Wilfred, I still believe is a really good coach. I still believe in his process and how he does things. I just think if he would have accepted this job in the summer when he was originally offered it and didn't was being a good guy, didn't want to leave the crew where they were, I think that this is a completely different situation at Celtic. I think he's still there. I think he's doing well. I just think that he tried to really change how all these guys played in the midst of a time where they weren't playing their best and they weren't winning games and fans were frustrated. And I think that it's unfortunate because I think it's going to put a little stigma on MLS coaches going to Europe, and definitely on him. I'm interested to where he ends up after all of this. I got to imagine he's going to take a little time off, maybe wait till after the World Cup, and I could see him going somewhere smaller in Europe, but I could also see a lot of MLS teams just lining up for him and want him to come back. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up.
Yeah, I think that, like you're mentioning, that there's an obvious tension. I mean, with any coach, right, is like, playing your style versus getting the results. Especially, and I know that every coach will tell you that that's synonymous. Their style and winning is the same. But in reality, especially implementing something that, Nazi is very unique. And I mean, like when his style flows, it looks great and it's really effective. But that's not something that you can just bring in and everybody learns in a matter of 8 games. That's a little bit deeper, and that roster isn't necessarily built for that either. So there is kind of levels to that as far as like, is that Nance getting kind of stuck in what his system is, and he doesn't care if he gets fired or not, like what that is. Like that's the kind of thing where it's like that feels a little silly. Then why'd you take the job if you were not going to sacrifice anything? Like it's a two-way street, and I think it's pretty well known that coaches in MLS get a lot longer leash than coaches most other places in the world. So I refuse to believe that was a naive thing that Nance was doing. So it's really interesting to see. It would be very unique if we could pick his brain and just say, like, what were the calculations there, and like what just see what he was like thinking and what his attempt and approach was. But I mean, to fire a coach after a month, we need to kind of hit this perspective too. I don't think any coach should get fired after a month unless there's something like just absolutely ridiculous, right? So
I don't know what's happened this year. You've seen it in a couple leagues in Europe. Like it's a couple of people have been let go. I mean, he had 33 days. I think was the final tally.
Yeah,
and it's tough. What I also think has to be accounted for is I think the players let him down, because if you look at the stats from all of his games, I think I mean, expected goals is not the end all be all. I totally get it, but the expected goals in 7 of the 8 games was Celtic beating their opponent, and I think that is unfortunate for him, because I think if he had a little bit better finishing, and you saw some of the clips, he's still the manager of Celtic, and I feel for him in that sense. But I mean, I would gladly welcome him back with open arms back to MLS, Minnesota. And I'm sure
go to Minnesota.
Dude, that'd be crazy. Actually, I didn't even think about that. We'll see. I have a feeling he's taking a little break. I can't imagine that he's going to jump right back in the saddle right now. Okay, well, let's get into our last little segment here. USA. It's World Cup year, Tony. It's officially 2026, so we got to talk about USA and what's going on. A couple guys have stood out this past week. Brendan Aronson is the biggest name. I mean, he had a brace against Newcastle, had a goal against Manchester United this past week, and has created a ton of chances and has become a mainstay now for Leeds in every single game. So shout out Brendan. And then secondary, Weston scored another goal for Juventus. The biggest crime in the world is that every year that Weston McKennie has to earn his spot back at Juventus. Yeah. So it will be interesting to see if he's a mainstay there. The rumor is around Weston right now is that he is not signing a new contract. he is going to be a free agent after this year, so it'll be interesting to see where he ends up after the World Cup. But a lot of rumors are back to the MLS, so we'll see. I mean, fingers crossed. There were rumors back to him with Cincinnati. We were bidding for him at one point, so I would not hate to see that. But would be interesting to see him come back at his age to the MLS this early. But I mean, anything on those two guys or anybody else that you've noticed?
Yeah, I mean, with the Wes McKinney stuff, like, I mean, we were talking about this a little pre-show. I don't love him coming back to MLS, but I think really what that boils down to is, like, if you're playing for one of the biggest teams in a Big Five league, like, you could meet that level. And, obviously, like, Juventus is a little bit different when it comes to the coaching scenario and just how a club really backs a player, which is the answer is not at all. Like, it's very, like, it's extra dog eat dog at Juventus compared to a lot of places in the Big Five. But for him to be able to play at that level and then want to come back to MLS, I guess that's a good thing for MLS. But, I don't know if I love, McKennie being the trailblazer with that. I'd love to see that be someone else for a different country that I don't root for in the World Cup. So selfishly, there's a little bit of that there. But no, I think that's good. I think the other name that I wanted to shout out and just at least mention was Ricardo Pepi, who we've brought up. And, he's still scoring goals. He's playing often for PSV. And admittedly, I don't know where he's at in the Champions League picture right now, but I'd have to look that up again. But
they're in the little break right now, so
yeah, right. So, but I like the trajectory he's on, and I think that the rumor mill has been going about him taking another step up, which would be exciting. So, those are the two players specifically that I'm really excited about. Without mentioning the obvious, Pulisic, he's just been on fire. Brendan Aronson been on fire. Those are the obvious ones. But just to add another perspective, a little bit more depth to our conversation there, that's who I'll throw in.
Yeah, totally. Last bit here. I've got one last question for you. I'll let you go first. If there was one player that you think is going to take their name to the next level, it could be someone like a Tyler Freeman status. It could be even Pulisic, if you really want to say that. But going to take their name and go to the next level because of their performance at the World Cup and maybe move on to the next big club because of how they played.
Yeah, I think Alex Freeman's a good shout there, but I think I'm going to go with Diego Luna on this one. So, probably make some bench appearances at the World Cup. And, he's been knocking on the door of getting the move to Europe, but it seems like those rumors, at least for starting this MLS season, have been quiet. We have not really seen any action for him. So my assumption would be that he'd, start at MLS and then go up to the World Cup. And, like that's your chance at the world stage, right? To really move on. And I think that it's very likely that after once the World Cup starts, we're done with Luna and MLS. Or at least for the short, and then I'll pull a Wes McKinney and come back way too early or something. But I think that that's the player that can really stand on, being on a positive trajectory, having that kind of publicity, and then making that jump and getting discovered that way. But I think it does bring up a good point, like just what the World Cup in general is going to do for this summer transfer window. All it takes is like 3 standout performances for your country, and all of a sudden everybody's calling about you. I think it's going to move that transfer market, on steroids. So that's a kind of a fun little thing to think about as well. But at least for your question specifically, Diego Luna, he's on the right track right now. And I think he stands to, he's not going to start being the starting 11 unless there's some crazy injuries, but he stands to get some minutes there too.
Yeah, I actually think I'm going to counter you a little bit on the Wes McKinney. It doesn't have to be Weston. From an MLS perspective, I think it'd be very good for one of these guys to go from the World Cup to MLS to build that momentum. Because I think what's being talked about a ton right now is how is the MLS going to benefit from the World Cup? Like how is our league going to grow because of the World Cup being in America? Because of course, previously 1994, I mean they made the MLS from the World Cup first off, but it grew soccer so much in our country, and I think having a guy of Weston's like standard coming to MLS would be great from that perspective. If you take out the individual, what it means for him, but for the country and for the league, I do think it would build momentum. And I would love to see some of the teams buy other countries' standout players in the World Cup as well, from like some smaller names guys to come build their brand in the MLS after the World Cup. So that's just a little side note.
Yeah.
My player, I'm going to zag a little bit. So you went with the young guy that's going to go to Europe for the first time. I'm going to go with the guy that's established in Europe, and Chris Richards. I think Chris Richards is on a track to take his career to the next level. Within the past 2 years, he has now stapled himself into Crystal Palace's starting lineup week in, week out, and performing at a very high level. And within this past year as well, we've seen him come to the U.S. men's national team camp and solidify himself as a leader as well. And we've seen it on the field and off the field. He'll go in interviews. He's very vocal. He's very passionate. And then on the field, he's not going to shy away from a fight as well. And I think that's what you need from your star center back, especially in a national team level. You need a guy that's going to be vocal, especially with a guy like Matt Freese behind you, who's going to be only like 15 caps into his men's national team career at that point. Like, you need a guy that's solidified in front of him to be that guy. And I think Chris Richards is going to play terrific. I think he's going to be a leader. And I said in the pre-show, I think he's built for a move. If we're going to talk about ceilings, I think it's even up there as like a rotational guy at Bayern. Like that's the type of move I'm talking about, where if he really performs that well and continues to perform well at Crystal Palace, his transfer market fee, I'm sure, is going to be going through the roof, and the expectation for who wants him next is going to be going through the roof. But I could see him upgrading within the Premier League or going to a La Liga or a Bundesliga, one of those top teams that can use him as well. So that's the hope. I think he's going to get there. But of course, we need to see the USA win some games if we want any of this to happen.
Well, what a luxury to have as a center back, playing at that level. It's been something we've definitely needed as a country for a really long time. So yeah, I echo that. If he can hit his ceiling, I mean, that'd just be an answered prayer for this men's national team.
Yeah, it's crazy to think he was playing like CDM half the time at Crystal Palace 2 years ago. Yeah, he's dynamic, and you've got to hope that a lot of these guys are gonna show up and stand out for the national team. I do think the Diego Luna thing is interesting, because I think for a while he was like, yeah, he's on the roster because it's just how he's playing for the national team. I think that Brendan Aronson thing is probably not great for him in terms of his like guaranteed roster spot. I just think those guys are like right in the same position. And if Brendan Aronson, I mean, coming in this year, he was not a guaranteed roster spot. And I think a lot of people actually had Brendan Aronson not on the roster. And I think it's the room's getting a little crowded now. Like you're seeing the effects now more than ever of, I think guys are understanding it's a World Cup year. And if I want any chance to make this roster, I got to perform right now. And I think that's part of what's going on with Brendan Aronson. Of course, he's doing it on the biggest stage, so you got to give him credit for that. But I think I'm cooling my jets on the Diego Luna's guaranteed roster spot. I think he finds a way to get in, but I think he's going to have to play well in the MLS season. I don't think he can just coast into this camp and think that it's going to be there for him. Okay, well, I think that's going to do it for us. We got through all of our MLS transfer talk. I can't believe how much happens every single week right now. I'm sure we're going to come back next Friday and have just as much to talk about. And I'm sure the winter transfer window is about to get crazy. So we appreciate you guys listening in. Like I said, we're on video now, so you can find that on Spotify. You can also find that on YouTube. And look out for our socials on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky. We're even on Blue Sky now as well, to see our clips and things like that are coming out. So with that being said, we will see you guys next Friday and talk to you soon.
See you.